Okay, this time we're going to practice using the crisscross method to factor a trinomial like 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. Now it is a trinomial, so therefore I know it will factor into a double bubble. That part is for sure. And I do know that there are x's in the front because we do have an x squared, but we don't really know what numbers go in front of those x's. So in order to do something where the number in front of the x squared is not a 1, we would take factors of that number and put them on the top of kind of a T box. So what two numbers multiply up to 2? I can think of only 2 times 1. And I'm going to put those two numbers on the top of a little T box. And then I also have to think of numbers that multiply up to 3. And I'm going to put those at the bottom of the T box. I know 3 is 1 times 3, and I know 3 is 3 times 1. And then this is the reason why it's called the crisscross method. I need to crisscross here and find a pair that add up to 5. We're using that same idea that we used in the last video, that these crisscross numbers have to add up to 5, and it's this sign here that tells me whether they have to add or subtract, in this case add. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply in the diagonal fashion here, crissing crossing, to find out a pair that adds up to 5. So 2 times 3 is a 6, and 1 times 1 is a 1, and I'm afraid that 6 and 1 do not add up to 5, so this would not be a good choice. If I do 2 times 1, I get a 2, and 1 times 3, I get a 3, and this time 2 and 3 do add up to 5. So therefore I'm going to choose the 2 and the 3, the 1 and the 1, and the two numbers here that are on the left hand side of this little T box go into the left hand bubble over here. So the 2 goes in front of the x and the 3 goes in the back. The 1 goes in front of the x and the 1 goes in the back on the right hand side. Now usually, you know, when we have a 1 in front of an x, we don't always put that 1 down. In this case I would apply that particular rule. And so I've got all the players inside the bubbles. The only thing I don't have is the signs. So this time the sign in front of the 5 is the one I haven't used yet, and that would be the one that's going to tell me how to make the signs. When I look at the two wing numbers here, in this case a 3 and a 2, the larger of those two wing numbers is the one that wins this plus sign here. So since it was this 3 on the left hand side, it's the 3 that gets the plus sign. And then I have to think the same way I did the last time. What kind of 1 would I multiply by a positive 3 to get a positive 3? I know that would be a positive. And again, the same rule that if the trinomial ends in a plus sign, the two signs have to be the same is true. Okay, let's try one other one that also has the crisscross. And that would be 6x squared minus 13x minus 5. In this case, again, I know it's a double bubble. Again, I know there are x's in the front, but I don't know what numbers go in front of the x's, and I'm going to let 6 do the work. So I can think of two possibilities that multiply up to 6, so I'm going to have to choose one, and I'd choose 2 times 3. I'll try that first. If it doesn't work, I'll try 1 times 6. And I put them in my T box. And then underneath, I have to find pairs that multiply up to 5, and lucky for me, I can only think of one pair that multiplies up to 5. I have a 1 and a 5, and I have a 5 and a 1. And this time I'm going to crisscross until I find a pair that subtracts up to 13. So as I go to crisscross here, I have a 10, because 2 times 5 is 10, and then 3 times 1 is 3, and that pair adds up to 13, so that's not the pair I'm looking for here. 2 times 1 is 2, 3 times 5 is 15. That's a pair that subtracts up to 13, so those are the players that are going to work when I go to factor here. And I'm going to put the 2 in front of the x and the 5 in the back on the left. and I'm going to put the 3 in front of the x and the 1 in the back on the right. Again, I can see what goes to the left and I can see what goes to the right. Now the only thing I don't have here is the signs. So the subtract sign now goes with the bigger player. So let me go back over here and see 15 was indeed bigger, so the subtract sign goes on the left. And since this sign is a minus, I need the two signs to be opposite, or I could think I need a -5 times a +1 to make -5. This little method is called crisscross, and I hope it helps you factor trinomials.